The story of the Second World War does not begin with gunfire or bombs. It begins in silence. A silence born from pride, humiliation, and ambition. When the guns of the Great War fell silent in 1918, millions believed the world had seen its last war. But beneath the calm, resentment was brewing. A storm was waiting to rise. Germany, a nation shattered, stripped of pride and power, its economy in ruins, its people starving, its army dismantled, was forced to sign the Treaty of Versailles. For the victors, it was peace. For the Germans, it was punishment. And from that punishment came rage. While the victors celebrated the end of the war to end all wars, a new generation in Germany swore revenge. They remembered the humiliation of defeat, the hunger of the Great Depression, and the chaos of democracy that could not feed its people. Out of this despair rose a man who promised greatness, a man who told them that Germany had not been defeated, but betrayed. His name was Adolf Hitler. As Hitler rebuilt his army in secret, the world looked away. Britain and France, weary from the bloodshed of the First War, hoped to avoid another conflict at any cost. Appeasement became their policy, denial became their shield. And while the democracies slept, Germany rearmed. In the East, another power was rising. The Soviet Union, under Joseph Stalin, was forging an empire of fear and industry. And in the Far East, Japan was turning its ambition toward conquest, seeking to dominate Asia through war and terror. The stage was set, the actors were ready. From the ashes of the old war, the seeds of a new and deadlier conflict were already taking root. Europe would soon be caught between two nightmares, fascism and communism, while the rest of the world watched the clouds of war gather once again. The League of Nations, born to preserve peace, stood powerless. The warnings of statesmen went unheard. And when Hitler sent his troops into the Rhineland in open violation of the Versailles Treaty, no one stopped him. The world had its chance to prevent war, but it failed.
The next 6 years would change the course of human history forever. From the ashes of Europe to the jungles of Asia, from the deserts of Africa to the islands of the Pacific, war would return on a scale the world had never imagined. This is not just the story of armies and nations. It is the story of choices. The choices that led the world from peace to destruction. The choices that turned silence into thunder. This is how the world slipped into war. By 1933, the world was in crisis. The Great Depression had shattered economies, ruined lives, and crippled faith in democracy. In Germany, poverty and despair spread like wildfire, and out of that fire, Adolf Hitler rose to power. Hitler promised the German people not just jobs or bread, but pride. He spoke to their anger, their humiliation, their dreams of revenge. He told them that Germany's enemies, the Allies, the Communists, and the Jews had stolen their victory, their wealth, and their destiny. And the people listened. They gave him power through the ballot box, and he used that power to destroy democracy itself. Within months, Hitler outlawed opposition parties, silenced the press, and filled the streets with his stormtroopers, the brown shirts. Germany had become a one-party dictatorship. The swastika flew over every building, every school, every heart. The Nazi salute replaced prayer. Children learned that obedience to the Führer was the highest virtue. Dissent was treason. Fear became law. Joseph Goebbels, Hitler's minister of propaganda, mastered the art of illusion. He used radio, film, and mass spectacle to convince Germans that they were a chosen people, destined to rule. The Nazis glorified the past, promised a pure future, and blamed all problems on scapegoats. Jews were stripped of citizenship, businesses were seized, and the Aryan race became the center of Hitler's twisted vision. While the world watched in silence, Germany rearmed in secret. The Treaty of Versailles had forbidden the building of tanks, planes, and submarines, but Hitler ignored it. He built an air force, the Luftwaffe. He expanded the army beyond limits, and he created new weapons, the foundations of blitzkrieg, or lightning war. Factories roared back to life, producing not consumer goods, but tools of destruction. And in doing so, Hitler also solved Germany's unemployment, his greatest propaganda victory. The world saw a revived nation, but behind that revival lay preparation for war. Meanwhile, across the world. While Germany rose from its ruins, the world around it was changing too. In the East, Japan had its own dream, the dream of empire. Cramped on small islands with few natural resources, Japan's leaders believed they had no choice but to conquer. In 1931, Japan invaded Manchuria, a region rich in coal and iron. The world condemned it, but no one acted. The League of Nations protested. Japan simply withdrew from the League. It was a test, and the world failed. Encouraged by this weakness, Japan struck again in 1937, this time invading China itself. The result was horrifying. Cities like Shanghai and Nanking became killing grounds. Civilians were massacred. Tens of thousands of women were assaulted in what became known as the Rape of Nanking. Japan's imperial army showed the world what modern brutality looked like, and the world again did nothing. Far to the west, Italy, under Benito Mussolini, dreamed of reviving the Roman Empire. Fascism had taken root in Rome years before Hitler seized power. Mussolini's black shirts marched through the streets, shouting, "Believe, obey, fight." In 1935, he invaded Ethiopia, one of the few independent nations left in Africa. The League of Nations imposed mild sanctions, but it was too little, too late. Italy conquered Ethiopia, showing once again that aggression would go unpunished. The dictators had learned the same lesson. The democracies, Britain, France, and America, were too afraid of another war to stop them. Peace, they believed, could be kept by negotiation. But peace without strength is only an illusion. Back in Europe, Hitler made his next move. In 1936, he sent German troops into the Rhineland, a demilitarized zone between Germany and France. The Treaty of Versailles had forbidden any German soldier from entering it. If France had acted, if Britain had stood firm, Hitler's bluff would have been exposed. His generals might even have turned against him. But nothing happened. France hesitated. Britain preached patience. Hitler later said, "The 48 hours after the march into the Rhineland were the most nerve-wracking of my life." When no one resisted, he knew the world would not stop him. That same year, civil war erupted in Spain. It became a battlefield for ideologies: fascism versus communism, dictatorship versus democracy. General Francisco Franco, backed by Hitler and Mussolini, fought against the Spanish Republic, supported by the Soviet Union. The Nazis tested their weapons there: new planes, new tactics, new bombs.
In 1937, the world was shocked when German aircraft bombed the town of Guernica, wiping it off the map. It was a warning of what was to come: total war, with civilians as targets. Meanwhile, Hitler's ambitions grew bolder. He looked eastward toward Austria, his birthplace, and declared that all Germans should live in one Reich. In March 1938, German troops crossed the border. The Anschluss, the union of Germany and Austria, was complete. Once again, there was no resistance. Austria welcomed him with cheers, but behind the celebrations lay fear and oppression. The world's silence echoed louder than ever. Next, Hitler turned to Czechoslovakia, a democratic nation standing in his path. He demanded the Sudetenland, a border region home to many ethnic Germans. Britain's Prime Minister, Neville Chamberlain, desperate to avoid war, flew to meet Hitler in Munich. After tense negotiations, Chamberlain agreed to give Hitler the Sudetenland, believing it would satisfy him. When Chamberlain returned to London, he waved a piece of paper and declared peace for our time. But peace built on concession is only the pause before destruction. Within 6 months, Hitler broke his promise. In March 1939, he invaded the rest of Czechoslovakia, proving that his hunger for land and power had no limits.
This time, Britain and France realized the truth. Negotiation had failed. They began preparing for war. The world divided. While Europe drifted toward war, alliances were shifting in secret. In August 1939, the world was stunned when two mortal enemies, Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union, signed the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. The pact promised that neither side would attack the other, but hidden within it was a secret agreement. Germany and the Soviet Union would divide Eastern Europe between them. Hitler now had the freedom to strike west without fear of Soviet intervention. Stalin, meanwhile, gained time to strengthen his forces and secure his borders. Both men believed they were outsmarting the other. At dawn on September 1, 1939, Hitler's armies invaded Poland. Blitzkrieg, lightning war, was unleashed for the first time. Tanks, planes, and motorized infantry struck with terrifying speed and coordination. Polish cities were bombed from the air. Civilians fled in panic. Within weeks, the country was crushed. On September 17th, Stalin invaded from the east, claiming his share of the spoils. Poland was erased from the map. 2 days after the invasion began, Britain and France declared war on Germany. World War II had begun. The nightmare that so many had feared and so many had refused to believe had become reality. In the end, the story of World War II stands as both a warning and a testament to human resilience. From devastation emerged renewal. From silence emerged resolve. And from darkness emerged the determination to protect peace. As time carries the memories onward, the responsibility falls to us to remember, to speak, and to stand against rising shadows. For only through vigilance can the hard-earned light endure for all generations.